You're listening to ADHD Support Talk. ADHD Support Talk is brought to you by ADDclasses.com. Visit www.addclasses.com to sign up for helpful online events and resources today. I want to welcome you back to ADHD Support Talk. I'm your co-host, Lynne Edris, and I am a productivity and ADHD coach. So I help overwhelmed professionals reduce procrastination, improve time management, and get more done with less effort so that they have more time, more energy, and more focus for what matters most to them. I am a woman with ADHD myself, so I've been there, I've done that, and I get it. I've been there, I've done that. And I've kind of come out the other side, I often say, to live a life of more success and fulfillment than I thought was possible for me at one time. And that's what I want for every single one of you. I want you to have your own version of success. You can learn more about me and the programs and services I offer at coachingadvantages.com. And today, my co-host and the founder of ADHD Support Talk, Tara McGillicuddy, is here with me. Hey, Tara, go ahead and introduce yourself again to
Hey,
the
Lynn. Yeah, as Lynn
audience.
said, my name is Tara McGillicuddy. I am the founder of ADHD Support Talk Radio, ADHD coach, woman with ADHD, and I wear a couple other hats. I've been involved in the online ADHD support community since 1997, offer different support resources for ADHD. You can learn more about me and the products and services I offer by going to my website, taramcgillicuddy.com.
Awesome. So today we are going to talk about a topic that both of us talk with our own clients about pretty frequently, and something that I think both of us have learned to manage over the years, or have had to learn to manage, and it's something that I continually work on. And that is brevity and clarity.
hmm
It's hard, right? It's hard for a lot of us with ADHD to be brief and be clear. Where do you want to start, Tara? Let's just go ahead and jump in.
I just think it's so important because I've been finding a lot with clients over the past month or so, this theme that people will email me or ask me something and they're giving way too much information too long.
Right.
It's frustrating me being on the other end. It's going to be frustrating to them because I'm not understanding what it is they're trying to get across. So I think, especially the brevity piece is so important because long-winded things can really frustrate the pe communication. It affects both people or all people when you're communicating.
Absolutely. Because it isn't clear, right?
Yeah.
Tara and I've talked about this before with all of my private clients and in all the groups that I run and have run. I kind of teach the concept that brevity equals clarity.
Yes.
So the more brief you can be in talking about whatever it is that you need or whatever it is that you want to share, the more clear you're required to be, right? And the
Yes,
more
yes.
easily you're going to communicate with the other person and help the other person help you with whatever it is that you need. It is hard for most of us with ADHD to be brief and be clear, but it is definitely something that you can learn to do because it will hinder communication when you have that
hmm
super long, unclear email or text message. It will lead to misunderstandings. It will overwhelm other people. It causes people, whether or not they love you or whether or not they really are engaged and
Yep.
they want to hear or read what you have to say, it
hmm
can cause people to tune out and kind of miss your
Yes.
point entirely. So it really is, it's a hindrance to effective communication. And frankly, what happens, I think, from the ADHD end, it also is problematic when you're the one delivering the kind of long-winded communication, whether
Yeah.
it's the excessively long email, text message, preamble to whatever story that you're trying to share or point you're trying to make, is it kind of damages your credibility a little bit too,
hmm
right?
Yeah.
It really does cost you as the person trying to communicate. It costs you a lot of time. It costs you a lot of energy. Over time, it
hmm
can kind of erode your
Yeah.
confidence a little bit, make it harder for you in the long run to communicate if you're not clear on where the disconnect is, right?
Yeah.
Because I think one of the things I know I have done a lot of times with, especially with a program or something like that I'm running or an online course, I try to make sure that everything
Hmm.
everything is covered, so to speak, like
Yes,
all the
yes,
bases are
yes.
covered, right? So it's like all the possible things that could go wrong or all the possible things, questions people could ask. I want to address all of that up front,
Hmm.
and that overwhelms people and leads to more confusion. So
Yes.
if I over explain, as I think I am right
Yes.
this very moment, people to check out, right? And it also
Yeah.
creates more confusion.
It does. It does when and it's like it's that sweet spot. And I can be the opposite end, which can rub people the wrong way too,
Right,
where I don't give enough information and I might come across very abrupt and rude. So with me, if I'm too short, maybe putting in like a please and thank you at the end so people don't think
right,
I want to kill them. But
right.
but what I found in communication, usually if you don't give enough information, people on the other end
Yes,
will ask clarifying questions if they,
right,
most, not all, but the majority of people, if they don't understand it, you don't give them enough information, they'll ask for more information. On the other hand, when you're giving too much, they'll tune out.
right,
And when you have ADHD, often when we're explaining things, it can sound more of an excuse
right.
than an explanation. And there is a
Absolutely,
difference. And a lot of
absolutely.
times that we do over explain. We feel that
Right.
need to explain because we've screwed up so many times. And you were talking about your coaching programs. I've been doing action sessions for years. And part of my action session is I've had people report their success. It's like
Yeah.
one sentence. If you said you're going to
Yep.
clear off the kitchen table, I cleared off 50% of the kitchen table. That's it.
Right.
And like I'll say, no front stories, no back stories, just
Right.
simply state your success. And it's really hard because people want to be like, but. I'm like, no, no buts.
Right. Right.
So, but this is, that's more, it helps people, share their success and process their success. But when they get a habit of doing that in the action sessions, they're gonna most likely practice it in other areas of their life.
Right, absolutely. So the kind of the info dump, or the, I
Hmm.
often call it, sorry for the picture, I call it verbal vomit, right? The
Yes.
verbal vomit makes it harder for the person to
Hmm.
understand or follow what you're trying to tell them, but it
Yeah.
also makes it harder for you to stay on track. That's
Yes,
when we
yes.
get ourselves distracted with side stories and side
Yep.
quests. And I joke
Yeah.
around, and sometimes my family members listen to the things I do, but I have three sisters, all of whom have ADHD. And we often joke around about like kind of the zigzaggy stories that we tell,
Yeah, yeah.
the really long voice messages that we can leave. I have
Hmm.
one sister, I love them all dearly. I have one sister who will absolutely exceed the length of the message you're allowed to leave
Yep,
on
yep,
the
yep.
answering machine, somebody's voicemail. And it just makes me laugh. But it makes me laugh because I get it
Hmm.
and I understand it and I've been there and I've done that.
Hmm.
But it isn't helpful for other people. And it can be kind of
Yeah.
embarrassing, but it really can lead us to tangents and getting off track. And,
Yep. Yeah.
in a lot of settings, with someone you love and somebody who gets you, that can be endearing and it can be just kind of what you
Yeah.
do. But in a professional setting or other settings, it really does make us come off as a little bit on the flaky side, right?
Yeah, yeah. Or like if you ask somebody, "Hey, what time would you like to get together?" And instead of saying, "Okay, around 5 p.m.," they'll tell you everything in their day that's gone on, and it'd be like, "Did they even answer the question?"
Right, right.
So
No.
people like that. And I can sometimes be like, I will say, "Okay, I have ADHD. It's hard for me. Can you just, I'm really overwhelmed. What
Right,
time would you like to be there?" Depending on who it is, I'd be like, "Can you just answer with what I asked you?" And
right.
I have a friend, a colleague who has ADHD. We're friends outside of the ADHD professional world, and she sent me something recently. I'm like, "Listen, you know I have ADHD. I asked you a question with a one-word answer." Okay, sorry. Like, but it's people, she had a lot going on in her life too, and she wanted to explain what was going on so I didn't feel blown off or who knows.
Right.
So I think the thing is like, what is it you're trying to get across? And you could be like, "Okay, what time you like together?" Oh, 5 p.m. And then you could be like, is that okay with you? Or,
Right.
you know,
How's 5 o'clock? Right.
yeah, yeah. And people, so and a big part is that the ADHD piece of disappointing people in the past and over explaining ourselves.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's hard to get clear in your head
Yes.
sufficiently to share something with brevity and with clarity. Right? It's hard for us to filter out what isn't important in the moment, especially if we're not taking time to think it through in the beginning. Sometimes it's hard to prioritize what details are essential versus what details are maybe interesting or whatever, just kind of, I would call it like filler, but unnecessary or maybe even more confusing. And some of us are verbal processors, right? Some of us are verbally impulsive. So I always say we don't engage the filter between the brain and the mouth sometimes, and thoughts come out as they occur rather than in any kind of order that makes sense to anybody else, right? And there are so many things that can exacerbate that. We've talked before, if you're familiar with the concept of convergent versus divergent thinking, right? Convergent thinking is when you're exploring ideas. That's the research, exploration, creative side of thinking. And then the convergent thinking. Did I say that backwards?
Yeah, I think you did.
Did I? Let me try this again.
Okay.
Divergent thinking is the creative side. That's where we diverge from a narrow path, if you think of it that way. It's where we think of ideas and connections and we explore and we research. And to me, that's how my brain works. I see this, I think that, I go there, that's divergent thinking. Convergent thinking is when you pull it all together and you make a decision or you do something with the information. And for a lot of us, that divergent thinking is more natural, and we haven't learned how to and when to shift into convergent thinking. That's a piece of it for some of us. I hope
What a
I
lot of people do
also didn't
now with
over-explain that.
no, but with technology now, you have a lot of people when they're sending you an email or sending you a text message, they've spoken in
Oh,
audio and like it's so talk about
yes, yeah,
verbal vomit or
absolutely.
whatever inappropriate
No
word really makes sense to
punctuation, no
say that. Yeah,
spacing.
and it's
Yeah.
like okay, like and it's really interesting when I'm in the car and I have Siri's reading it out loud and I'm like, what? When it's like, oh, and the people with the emoji face, it's and I'm like, okay, it's yeah,
I have a
sometimes
really
it's
good,
funny.
yeah,
Yeah.
it is funny. I'm laughing because I know I've done it. I try really hard to use punctuation when I voice text or voice whatever, email or whatever. But I literally have a really good friend who has ADHD, and I just said to my husband last night, people with ADHD should not be allowed to voice text and drive.
God. Oh no. Yeah. No,
It's
unless it's a
fun.
one-word answer. Yeah, unless it's
No,
like
it was
yeah.
like a whole
Oh my
spiral. I
God.
had to read
Yeah,
it six
like
times, right?
they're journaling to you.
Basically,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's almost
Yeah.
literal verbal vomit.
It's like
Sorry.
can't you at this point can't you just like leave a voicemail? You know.
Absolutely. My husband
Yeah.
says that to me all the time. Wouldn't it have been easier just to pick up the phone? Like, yes, it probably
Yeah.
would have
Yeah.
been much
Yeah.
faster. The other
Yeah.
piece of this is sometimes we over explain because of our sensitivity, because
Yes.
of RSD, rejection sensitivity, or because of past trouble we've had with communication. So we feel like we need to over explain things to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that
Yeah.
people are getting what we're trying to say, when it actually can have the opposite impact.
Yes, 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 it does. And in a conversation, you can kind of, when you're face to face, you can notice the person drifting off
Right.
or they're looking at you shaking your head. When it's text or email, you don't have that. So it's hard to really know, okay, the other person's behind the
Yeah,
email, the phone, and they're shaking their head or they've just lost it. Or I know not everyone has ADHD, but everyone's busy. And like
absolutely.
it's kind of like if you don't get my attention in two sentences or less,
Right.
I'm moving
Right.
on to something else. And
Right.
we've become an ADHD like society where
Absolutely.
everyone's like that now. Like so that's something to really think about. Can you capture that person's attention in one paragraph? You have to capture people's attention, and it's
Right. Right.
that's just how it is these days.
Absolutely. I think that's very true. Just the volume of information
Hmm.
and the volume of communications that come across and in front of our attention every day is just
Hmm.
insane anymore.
Yeah.
So when you can learn to kind of master that brevity and clarity, or at least improve, I wouldn't say I've mastered it, that's for darn sure, but
Yeah.
improve your brevity and your clarity It helps with your confidence. It helps with communication. I mean, it really does help with relationships. It helps with
Mm-hmm.
productivity. You're not spending nearly as much time. So, one of the things I often tell my clients, and this goes for any kind of communication, really, whether you're asking for help or you're trying to think through how to solve a problem for yourself or you're writing an email to someone, is bottom line it first.
Yes.
In, like Tara said, 1 to 3 sentences, you pick whatever's comfortable for you. Don't overstress yourself out and give yourself some really tight constraint that feels like it's just too rigid at the
Mm-hmm.
beginning. But in a sentence or two, or maybe three, what's the bottom line?
Mm-hmm.
Bottom line it for yourself. That's the way I always talk
Yeah.
about it. Define done. What's the point of what you're about to communicate?
Yeah.
What does that person really need versus what
Yeah.
do you want them to have? That's a
Yes.
big one,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
I'm going
Yes.
to say that again for the cheap seats. What does the other person need versus what do you want to give them? That's a
Mm-hmm.
very different way to look
Yeah.
at it. So, what's the point? Define done, define the outcome. What do they need? And really bottom line it for yourself first.
Yeah.
And then you can keep checking in with yourself to see if you're still on track. So sometimes
Yes.
what I will do is I will start an email, for example. Email is an easy one to use as an example because we can waste so much time over writing, over
Mm-hmm.
communicating, over drafting emails. I will take the person's name out of the two first, the recipient field, and I'll put a few bullet points for myself. These are the 1, 2, 3, 4 points that I want to make sure that I make, and then I fill in around that. And I decide in advance, I'm done when I communicate that information. And then I always end with something like, let me know if you need additional information, or
Yes.
feel
Yes.
free to reach out if you have
Yes.
questions or need additional information. And
Yes.
then it opens up a dialogue. And that
Mm-hmm.
really is communicating. It isn't verbal vomit. It isn't,
Yeah.
throwing the kitchen sink at someone in hopes that you're giving them everything they could possibly want, need, and then some.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I know you and I talked about this before in other podcast episodes, is using like ChatGPT or AI can be extremely helpful. And just like if somebody asked you a question or like just you could start out with being, okay,
Absolutely.
copy and paste it into AI and what is this person looking for?
Right.
Because sometimes you might not be on the same page as the person. And
Right.
usually, Chat GPT or AI is going to understand. So it might be like, oh, I didn't realize that what they were asking. And maybe what you can do from that is like, okay, now I understand the question better. I can formulate my answer better, my response
Right.
better. Or you could ask AI to help you come up with a response.
Right.
And,
And you
and
could
you can
say, I
even,
want
yeah,
to make
yeah.
these points. I want to make sure I
Yes.
convey this information. Help me
Yeah.
write a
And
clear,
and you could
concise email.
say, I'm speaking to my sister, or this is a client, or this is
Right.
XYZ, and they can help you formulate it. Or sometimes they'll give you choices too, and sometimes that makes sense, but that's not my style. They're gonna
Right.
know it's not me.
Right.
But you have
Absolutely.
somewhat of a template, even if you don't copy and paste it, it helps you process it. And what I'm finding when I use ChatGPT is sometimes ChatGPT doesn't understand me. And I'm like thinking, okay, if ChatGPT didn't understand me, it's probably a good chance that my human audience isn't going to understand what I'm saying.
Right.
Because, sometimes I'm in my own world, I'm in my own mind,
Right.
and the
Absolutely.
point I get across, and sometimes I think of things that people have never heard before. So,
Right.
I'm a pioneer sometimes with things, or I'm just totally out there. So it could help you explain it. And that's one of the other things that sometimes when people are looking at shaking their heads, it could be because we've talked too much or gave them too information, or it could just be something they don't understand because I'm in a different world than they are.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're coming from a completely different place or you have information they don't have or whatever,
Yes.
but that's a great way to do it. So if
Hmm.
you're a verbal processor, you can
Hmm.
voice dictate it into
Yeah.
ChatGPT. One of the things I do, I'm sort of a verbal processor. I'm not quite
Hmm.
as much of a verbal processor as some of my clients are, but it's still an important part of kind of working my way through
Yeah.
things sometimes. And I learned really early in my marriage that I have to be careful about doing that with my husband because he makes assumptions based on what I say being like a decision or something like that. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
and I often will say, hang on, I'm just talking this through, and sometimes I will
Yeah.
say that to as I'm explaining something, just hold on. I promise I'll circle
Yeah.
around and I'll be able to make sense of all of it if I don't have an opportunity to verbal process otherwise. But sometimes I will like record into my phone or into something as if I'm explaining it to someone else.
Yes.
And even if I don't do the voice to text, like I'm not dictating it or I'm not creating
Mm-hmm.
something written from it, I am processing it. So
Mm-hmm.
if I am telling it to someone like I'm explaining it, a concept or something I want to convey, or something out there that, is a model or something I'm creating, or even sometimes I'll do this for like a webinar flow. I will explain it like I'm telling an intern or a secretary or
Yes.
somebody that,
Yes.
what I want them to create or what I want them to understand.
Mm-hmm.
And just the act of talking it through in advance for a minute
Mm-hmm.
or two helps me get more clear so that I can be more brief and I can communicate it a little better. So there are lots of things you can do depending on how
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
process.
I think just the key is being aware of it first, that
Absolutely.
brevity and clarity usually go hand in hand, and
Absolutely.
sometimes TMI is is not good. And I'm not just saying TMI as in you said something inappropriate they don't need to hear, but
Right.
sometimes
Been there, done that.
information overload, and we all, as people with ADHD, we all suffer from information overload at
Oh,
times. And
absolutely.
when we're the ones, providing it, or
Transmitting the information
transmitting
overload.
it, yeah, it's, I'm responsible for the information overload. Oops.
Absolutely. I know I will occasionally do my part. That's for darn sure. But it's
Mm.
something to be aware of, right?
Yeah.
Any last thoughts you want to share with our listeners and then give your contact information again?
The next time you're communicating with someone, just ask the question. Am I answering the question, or am I giving the information they want as clear as possible?
Absolutely. I love
Yeah.
it. So bottom line it for yourself. What's my point? What's the goal here? What's the objective?
Yeah. And as
Right?
I was speaking, I obviously wasn't doing that because I lost my train of thought. All right. So the best way to get in touch with me is through my website, taramcgillicuddy.com.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I hope you guys found this helpful. As always, you can connect with us in the ADHD Support Talk Facebook community. We'd love to hear your thoughts. We'd love to hear what works for you, any topics you'd like us to discuss, any experts you'd like us to have on as guests, and just connect in general. You can also find all of our podcast episodes on YouTube as well. But we appreciate your attention. Again, I'm Lynne Edris. You can learn more about me and what I do at coachingadvantages.com. And as always, we appreciate your attention. Take care.